Welcome back in for another episode of SODFS, brought to you by Sons of Dynasty and proud members of True North Fantasy Football. Follow us at Dynasty Sons on Twitter and subscribe to the TNFF network on YouTube so that you never miss a show with us moving forward. I'm Dan. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Brown NFL, and here to my left is Nate. You can find him at Nate_FFL. Nate, what's going on, man? Here we are, another Thursday night, back at it again.
I'm stoked, buddy. Been a weird week, rainy day here in Michigan. The whole state's soaked. It was a good day, though. It's a good day every time I get to come on here with you. Last week was interesting. We didn't lose anything. We made some money, and that's good. We didn't hit big, but we made a profit. But we did have some misses too. So it's important that we cover that. So we're going to have a little bit of accountability here.
Yeah. There was a couple of guys starting with our top 5 plays, an article that we are releasing every Friday. This week's will be out first thing tomorrow morning. So be sure to head over to truenorthffb.com to check that out. But I'll start out with Jamar Chase was one of my 2 guys. He caught 2 of 4 targets for 54 yards and a touchdown. Not the showing that I was hoping for, but the Bengals volume just really hasn't been as plentiful as it was this past season. Better days are ahead for Jamar Chase as early as this week, with T. Higgins potentially banged up and potentially not going to be available for this game. So stay tuned. More details will emerge as far as T. Higgins' health concerns go. But next up, Amari Cooper, Nate. What happened with our boy Amari last week? It was a shoo-in.
Yeah, no, it seemed like a sure thing. Everybody was on Dak and Amari, or a Cowboys stack, because it just seemed like a lock. And this week was a reminder that the Cowboys like to run the football, and Zeke's still there. Amari dropped the touchdown, which hurt my soul. That kind of stuff's going to happen. But the game script wasn't what we expected. Everything was just kind of not what we wanted, especially for fantasy. And it was kind of surprising, especially when Dallas went down early, but they still ran the ball and they were successful at it. So good for them, but it hurt us.
Yeah, that was a game that everybody was all over. And if you managed to pivot off of it before the afternoon games kicked off, it was probably for the best. If you ended up getting some Derrick Henry exposure off of that, it probably turned out pretty well for you. Another guy I had last week was a Denver rookie running back, Javonte Williams. 13 rushing attempts, 64 yards in the week 2 win over the Jaguars. He added another reception for 10 yards. It was not a hit by any means. I was really hoping that the Broncos would lean to the run a little bit more. I'm almost falling back into that trap again this week, as Javonte Williams is still priced down at a reasonable spot in the 4,000 range. This past week, running back snaps through 2 games. Melvin Gordon, 74 snaps, Javonte Williams, 61. That's 29 touches for Gordon and 29 touches for Williams. So we truly have a split backfield here, and I think it's ultimately going to come down to how long can Melvin Gordon hold up, and games that do get out of control, potentially like this one, if Broncos can really throttle this week, we could see Williams really kind of start to take a little bit more bulk of the workload as the Broncos try to keep Gordon healthy for the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I was all over Javonte at 4,400. How could you not be? It was a good matchup, but that split backfield is still there. It's like I said, it's another reminder that we're going to have to be patient with him. I do think success is going to come for Javonte, but need to reel it in a little bit, be patient. It's going to happen. We just got to wait for the right time. Another guy, he was the guy we both liked, was Najee Harris. He's been kind of a hot topic on Twitter lately as far as, are you worried? The workload's good. What should we be thinking? Last week he had 10 carries for 38 yards. Surprising. For me, it was surprising that the Raiders went into Pittsburgh and won. He also added 5 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. It was a late touchdown, which kind of saved his scoring, but I'm not too worried about Najee. He's another guy we got to be patient on. These players are rookies, and we're only 2 weeks into the season, so we need to make sure we're keeping our expectations in check.
Yeah, Najee Harris this week against the Bengals, potentially Deontay Johnson. We still don't have word from him. I do not believe he practiced again today. So if he is going to miss time, we could see Najee Harris potentially get an uptick in volume in the passing work, as well as maybe a few extra carries on the ground. Without Ben Roethlisberger's true number one wide receiver out there, they may look to lean on Najee Harris a little bit more this week. But we will get to that. Let's go ahead and jump in to some of the early games this week, starting out with the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans with a game total of 50.5 as of right now. Nate, who are some guys that you might be targeting in this Colts Titans game?
Well, starting out, I'm going to go right to Jonathan Taylor. I know we talked a little bit. You're not real high on him this week. Personally, I am. I'm not expecting, a Derrick Henry week 2 game or anything, but I think he can be productive. He's priced at 6,700. I think that's too cheap for him. He's a stud. 39 touches in 2 weeks. Last week, 15 carries. I think this week's a perfect week for a bounce back. He's talented. It's a good matchup versus the Titans. That Tennessee defense has been giving up big plays the first 2 weeks of the season, so I like the upside a lot here. Moving on to the other running back, Derrick Henry. We all seen what he did last week. 50 points is pretty impressive. He actually caught the ball too. Carried the ball 35 times, 182 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the win over the Seahawks, he also, like I said, had 6 receptions for 55 yards. That's super surprising. Henry has never been one, to catch the ball. I don't think it's going to continue, so I wouldn't expect it again this week. They're facing the Colts. Carson Wentz, I don't think – is he already out, or is that still not announced? I don't think he's going to play.
I don't believe he's going to play either. I think they did say that they might even use some sort of a tandem at the quarterback position. It's going to be a shit show, so I would stay away from that.
Yeah, I don't want any of that. So Tennessee, I like Derrick Henry. The price is really high. I'm not sure how much exposure I'll have. I'll probably end up going elsewhere as far as my studs go, but you can throw him in a lineup. Cash games, he's good lock for that, but he's the highest priced player, for a reason. He's a great running back, but I'll have limited shares this week.
Yeah, you want to pay up for Derrick Henry this week at 8,600. I don't mind doing it. A great way to achieve that by saving a little bit of roster is to go ahead and pair him up with the Titans DST. It is one of my favorite DST plays this week, coming in all the way down there at the bottom at 2,400. And as we mentioned, this Colts offensive unit, aside from JT, who we like, but I have my reasons for maybe casting a little bit of shade on him this week, like Marlon Mack coming in at the fourth quarter. If we got Marlon Mack, they're talking up, Hines constantly. I just don't know that JT's really getting that workload that we expected to see him coming into week 1, and the target volume that we did see week 1 didn't really happen in week 2. I just have enough reasons of doubt, and the overall continuity of this offense this week is enough for me not to want to pay up for JT at 6,700. But I love stacking Derrick Henry with this Titans DST because the savings at DST allows you to get that little bit of extra for Derrick Henry. And this is another game that we really could just kind of see him dominate the touches as they essentially wind the clock down throughout the game. But let's move on to the next game. A little bit of juice here in the Atlanta Falcons at the New York Giants, 48.5 with the over-under. Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, a budding star through these first 2 weeks, averaging 25.4 fantasy points per game. Now with a week 3 matchup that to a defense that surrenders 5 points to the quarterback position. The Falcons, we know he's got plenty of pass catching options that should have a field day with this Atlanta defense, and also a rushing floor with 6 or more attempts through 2 games and totals 122 yards on the ground. The price is cheap enough to have a great floor with huge upside this week against my abysmal Atlanta Falcons. Are you in on any Danny Dimes exposure this week?
I think it's a good play. I think it's a good price. My worry is the ownership percentage. He's everywhere on every DFS show. That's all they're talking about is Daniel Jones. So I'm just worried he's going to be too highly owned really for me, but yeah, I think it's a good play. I'll play him. I'll have some exposure. I'll have him in some GPPs.
See, Daniel Jones, he's just not sexy, and when you're not sexy, people don't want to play you. I think that alone is enough to keep that percentage down in a wheelhouse for a great GPP play, and saving money at the quarterback position always allows you to make that rest of your roster construction a little bit more interesting. Matt Ryan coming in at 5,400 also could be interesting this week. He completed 35 of 46 passes for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns with 3 interceptions to the Buccaneers on Sunday. Obviously my Atlanta Falcons have looked less than stellar these first 2 weeks. We were kind of expecting big things with the emergence of Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley stepping into one role. We just really haven't seen it click together for these Atlanta Falcons yet. I do like Kyle Pitts' price here at 4,900 this week. Kyle Pitts is currently sitting 6th in target share among tight ends through 2 games with a 17% share. And this past week, we did see his snap percentage go up to a 79% range. I think that Kyle Pitts is getting quickly acclimated here to the next level, and they are going to start looking at him a little bit more, including as early as this week, as Calvin Ridley may draw a little bit of a tough matchup on the outside.
Yeah, I like that, and I also like Ridley too. It is a tough matchup, but his price is down to 7K. I like Matt Ryan's price. There's a couple other quarterbacks I like around this price range too, or one in particular, I should say. So I kind of like the idea maybe of a couple GPPs, with the trio stack of Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, and Pitts. So yeah, I'm in on that. I think that's pretty good.
Well, let's not keep the people waiting anymore. I think that I know what they want to hear about when we're talking about this game, and that's Saquon Barkley coming in at 6,500. That's as cheap as we've seen Barkley in a while, and he too has seen his snap share rise exponentially from week 1 into week 2. Do we think that Barkley gets unleashed against this Atlanta Falcons defense this week?
That's a tough one for me, man. He's definitely been like the biggest disappointment so far this year. Will I play him? Yeah, probably, because he's priced way down. His ownership will probably be low because he's disappointed a lot of people. So I think it's a solid gamble in tournaments and GPPs, but what are we expecting? 15 carries. Hopefully he can break off a couple big runs.
Well, and Kenny Golladay is another guy in this matchup that hasn't really been healthy, but now that he is back on the field, we saw the frustrations mount this past week as Golladay was letting the coaching staff know just how unhappy he was. Squeaky wheel get the grease this week. Kenny Golladay, 5,600. I
will have absolutely no Golladay, to be honest with you. Yeah. Even as a former Lion, it's hard to get excited for Golladay. I'm not really feeling it, man.
I understand. I kind of want to see it before I'm putting it out there too. But let's move on into one of the more exciting games on the main slate this week, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs with another 55.5 over under total. This is another one that we're expecting some fireworks this week. We just saw Travis Kelce put up a great game this past week. That's back-to-back games for Travis Kelce, really putting up solid numbers. This week, they have him priced up at 8,200 as the tight end one, but he does have a tough matchup this week with Derwin James, who many of us consider one of the best defenders in the NFL, when healthy, that is. Do we think that Travis Kelce might be a fade this week at 8,200? Is this the week that maybe Tyreek Hill really gets to blow the top off the defense? This kind of has more of a feel of a Tyreek Hill week for me. Where are you at, Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill this week, Nate?
I love Tyreek Hill this week. I'm glad you brought it up because I'm all in on Hill. I'm going to have a ton of Hill. I think he's priced at 8,400. I'm not scared. I love it. Kelce's fine, but yeah, I'm going to be leaning towards Hill this week. One thing though that I want to bring up is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's like DraftKings is begging us to play him. He's priced at 4,900 in a matchup with an over-under of 55 against the Chargers. They've allowed 6.8 fantasy points per game to the running back position. So it looks like everything's in line for him to have a great game, but something about it just feels like a trap, and I am very, very, very nervous to play him.
Yeah, I have my doubts as well. But we haven't seen anything come out as far as the coaching staff goes that really says that they're going to have CEH really take a sit down, maybe let Williams get a little bit more run. I think that he still is the running back on a prolific offense, and with a game total of 55 and a half, there's going to be points to be had. I think this might be just enough of a price break for me, and CEH left enough of a bad taste in other people's mouths to maybe keep his ownership semi-low. I think a lot of people will be on to him at this price. I mean, like you said, that is just begging for attention, and quite frankly, they have mine.
I agree. I'll be playing him, but I'm going to be very nervous about it. Kind of moving on. I know you're extremely high on this guy, Justin Herbert. This year, a lot of people have called him a disappointment. To be honest with you, though, he's played really, really well. It just hasn't shown through in fantasy quite as much. He's averaging just 14 fantasy points per game through the first 2 weeks. This week against the Chiefs, though, I think it's going to change. The Chargers are 7-point underdogs. This game is likely going to be a bit of a shootout. So if it is, Herbert's going to be throwing. I like Keenan Allen. I love Herbert. I know you love Herbert. The Chiefs have gave up the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks last year with the 20.5 average. There's holes in the secondary, and Herbert should be able to take advantage of it with a high-scoring shootout in Kansas City.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do love Justin Herbert this week. And at 6,500, that's a price that I'm willing to pay to get in on an explosive game like this one. Justin Herbert seems perfectly capable of putting up huge yardage through the air. Yeah, the touchdowns haven't been there, but maybe this is the week that the touchdowns are there. So I do love Justin Herbert this week, as they have to keep their foot on the throttle in order to keep up with Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Mike Williams coming in at 6,400 this week. Through 2 weeks, Williams ranked second in targets with 12 per game and second in end zone targets with 2 per game. We continue to see Big Mike kind of have the resurgence that we've all dreamed of since the guy came into the NFL, and Justin Herbert's making it happen. Are you going to be in on Mike Williams again this week at 6,400?
Yeah, I'll have him in some lineups. I'm not super excited. It's a fair price in a game that's got a very, very high over-under. So hopefully he gets, a solid game there. I like Keenan Allen more, to be honest with you, but Mike Williams is fine.
Another piece of this offense that I'm actually excited to get in on as far as the cheap option goes. You don't want to pay up to some of these prices to get a part of this game. Look no further than tight end Jared Cook. He ran a route on 65% of Justin Herbert's dropbacks and catching 3 of 5 targets for 28 yards. Herbert throws for 300, 350, pretty much in his sleep at this point. With this game total, I'm expecting Herbert to go to the air often. I think Jared Cook at 3,900 allows you the chance to really get some exposure and has some touchdown upside this week against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. It's a low price and a high scoring game. There's a very likely chance that he catches a touchdown. So I like it. I don't mind it at all. But the guy I'm really, I'm kind of tilting on him. I wasn't so excited at first, and I've been doing research for days now, and I'm starting to think, more and more that I like Austin Eckler here. He's inconsistent is what worries me. I think it's either going to be a boom or bust game for him. He had 9 receptions last week. If the Chargers get behind, which they probably will, he's going to get, his fair share of work this week. I'd probably avoid him in cash, but I think he's a really good dart throw as far as the game script goes and stuff for GPPs.
Well, yeah, and what I love about him is we've seen through 2 weeks that he is game script proof. He's getting the red zone work. He's getting the passing work. He's getting all the work that you want your running back to get, and attached to this offense that is putting up big yards each week while the touchdowns haven't been there. Like I mentioned, this is a game total where Austin Eckler could absolutely smash this week, and I do love him at 7,200 this week.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being a pretty good play.
Let's move along into the next game, which is the Bengals at the Steelers, 45.5 point total here. And we'll start with the Bengals. Joe Burrow, target distribution so far this year: Higgins 15, Boyd 13, Chase 11, Mixon 6. The passing volume has been down to start the year. Burrow only attempting 28.5 passes per game when it was upwards to 35 to 40 per game last year when he was healthy. I'm really hoping the Bengals kind of get that passing volume uptick a little bit more moving forward. Now that Burrow's kind of had a chance to get his legs back underneath him, T. Higgins is potentially questionable, as I mentioned, for this game. So that's something you'll have to keep an eye on. But if T. Higgins does indeed miss this game, I don't mind a Joe Burrow at 5,500 stack with Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. Jamar Chase being 5,400, Tyler Boyd being 4,700. You can get a concentrated stack if T. Higgins is potentially going to miss this game. For a pretty cheap asking price. So I don't mind that game. Maybe you could even bring it back with a Najee and a Claypool or something if you're really trying to attack this game that might go a little bit more overlooked compared to some of these other games with a 55 plus point total. This one at 45.5 may have some sneaky upside to it with a Bengals defense that hasn't been great and a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that has known to be susceptible to the pass.
Yeah, there's some solid plays here. We'll see what's going to happen with Higgins and stuff. And I like Chase at 5,400, but the guy that I'm really in on this week is Joe Mixon at 6,300. Through 2 weeks, Mixon ranks second among running backs in carries. He's got 49, third in snap rate with 80.6, and he's second in rushing yards with 196. Giovanni Bernard's gone. He's in Tampa Bay, so the passing game peripherals are there. Mixon has run a route on 61% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks at this season. That is pretty solid. Last year he was at 45% route share, I believe. So he had a monster week in week 1. The Bengals are playing pretty well. I worry about the offensive line a little bit, but this matchup against Pittsburgh, the Steelers, like you said, the Steelers defense is, it's good, but they do give up some plays. So as far as ownership goes, it's hard to say. I think he'll probably be a little bit lower, making him, something that I want to focus on in GPP, especially at 6,300, it saves just a little bit of money.
Yeah, no, I love Mixon this week, and at that price tag, as I mentioned, if T. Higgins is going to be out, maybe Mixon gets a little bit more passing volume himself at 6,300, even with a tough matchup against this Steelers defense. They are banged up right now. Another defensive lineman, I believe, to the IR, so they could definitely be had, and this is a game that I think does have some sneaky upside. A little bit of breaking news here for the Thursday night football game. Christian McCaffrey has suffered some sort of a hamstring injury and is out as of right now. That is all I've heard. But if you have CMC in your lineup, go ahead and pour one up early tonight.
There goes half my leagues.
Yeah,
that's the worst news I've heard in a while.
Let's. I'm not saying it's anything serious. That was just an update that flashed across my screen here. So something to look at moving forward. It might be Chuba Hubbard night tonight. But Chicago Bears at the Cleveland Browns. Here we go. A little bit of fun football talk. 47.5 over under here, or point total. Excuse me. Justin Fields. Let's talk about my man Justin Fields. Getting his first NFL start this week. I've been in on Justin Fields since pre-NFL draft. Excited to finally see him get his first start. Including the preseason, Justin Fields has played 139 snaps so far, which is a little bit over 2 full games worth, and has accumulated 22 for 126 and 2 as a runner. While we can still expect to see plenty of growing pains, the upside is undeniable against this Bengals defense. And at 5,200, that's an interesting price point right there that I'm going to have to get on board with. Where are you at on Justin Fields this week? GPP, what's happening?
I'm excited just to watch the man play football. Even as a Michigan fan and a Lions fan, I should hate Fields coming from Ohio State and going to Chicago, but I love the kid. I think he's super talented. There's proof, too, that he's going to raise the fantasy ceiling of these pass catchers in Chicago. As far as passes that travel 10 plus yards in the air this during preseason and stuff in the first 2 weeks, Fields, 47% of his passes. That's almost 50%. Andy Dalton, a miserable 12. That is not good. 15 plus yards on the passes. Fields, 27%. Dalton, 2%. 20 yards or more. Fields, 20%. Dalton, 0, because Dalton does not throw down the field. So if you're, an owner of any of these Bears pass catchers, you have to be excited. If you're an owner of Fields, you have to be excited. I'll have him in some GPPs just because he's a rookie still. There could be growing pains. He could make mistakes, but it's going to be fun. So I'm going to have him in GPPs, just to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, speaking of Bears pass catchers, I am another fan of Darnell Mooney, who is also questionable as of right now, but I believe he will end up playing. He's been banged up the first couple of weeks, but has been out there each week. So I think he will play. And he's been targeted downfield on targets with 20-plus air yards 24 times, which is the 10th most in the NFL, yet only 6 of those targets were catchable throughout his couple of years. Things haven't been much better to start the season, as you mentioned, with Andy Dalton under center. It really just kind of limited what we could expect to see out of Darnell Mooney. Insert Justin Fields, considered to be one of the better deep ball passers in what was a loaded quarterback class. I think now is the time to get in on Mooney, and with a $4,300 price tag this week, if he's cleared and healthy this week, I will be putting him in my lineup. And a little skinny stack there with Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney. That's only 9,500 between the two of them right there. Really allows you to get a little bit more interesting with the rest of your lineup. How about Nick Chubb on the other side of the ball? That's really the only Browns player that I think I'd really have any interest in this week. Where are you at on Nick Chubb? 7,600.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm a guy that likes Kareem Hunt, and I've always played him and had him in my regular fantasy football leagues and stuff. But I'm starting to worry about him because I think Chubb's going to slowly start to take over this Browns backfield. Looking back to last year, Chubb has actually outscored Kareem Hunt in 11 of their last 15 games. And head coach Kevin Stefanski has made it apparent that he wants to get Chubb more involved, in the passing game. So lately, Chubb's actually run more routes at 28, Hunt with 25 through the last 2 games. So, the proof is there that Stefanski's trying to make Chubb, more involved. He's trying to make him the lead back there. And, he always has been, but the passing work hasn't been there because of Kareem Hunt. I think that could start to change. I'm starting to get to the point where I want to kind of fade Hunt a little bit, and I'm getting, more in on Chubb. The price, 7,600, is fair, so yeah, I'll have him in probably some cash. I like him in cash. He's going to get his work, and I like him in GPPs as well.
Yeah, no, I think Chubb is in a good spot this week, and 7,600. I'll probably rather lean towards Austin Eckler, who's a little bit cheaper. And
That's
like you mentioned, I'm just all over him, so I don't think I'll have a ton of Nick Chubb this week. But for GPPs, anything's possible. Let's move on into the next game. We have Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens coming to visit your Detroit Lions with a surprisingly high point total of 49.5. And ultimately, it comes down to Lamar Jackson. He's at 7,800 this week, which isn't a bad price for Lamar. I think it's due to the fact that we may think that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens could end up smashing the Detroit Lions, but we've seen the Detroit Lions put up some substantial yardage with Jared Goff and co, no matter how many attempts it takes, and enough to where this game could end up being semi-competitive due to a competent Lions offense. So Lamar Jackson at 7,800 through 2 games, only Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon have more rushing yards than Lamar Jackson. And that's ultimately what you're getting with him, as the passing game just really hasn't flourished like we were promised this offseason. We have seen, however, Marquise Brown, who's coming in at a reasonable price point this week of 5,600, really start to get acclimated with Lamar Jackson in the passing game. He had his first 100-yard game of the year and his second trip to the end zone this past week. Over his last 10 games, including the playoffs, Hollywood Brown is averaging 7.3 targets and 17.1 fantasy points per game, never dipping below the 12.5 fantasy points mark in any game. So we're starting to see Marquise Brown really kind of emerge as the go-to weapon for the passing game, kind of usurping Mark Andrews as what we considered to be the dominant, the 1A in that offense. I think that Marquise Brown might be taking that torch away from Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews coming in at 5,000 this week. He's been kind of disappointing for 2021. I kind of had higher hopes with Rashad Bateman going to IR, Sammy Watkins being Sammy Watkins, that maybe Mark Andrews would really kind of, keep the ball rolling for this passing attack. Where are you at on these guys? Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, any exposure this week?
Yeah, I love Hollywood Brown. I've watched pretty much every Ravens game so far this year, and he's been playing really well. He's made great catches, and he's priced at 5,600. So the Lions have pretty much no cornerbacks left, so he should have a pretty easy matchup. And he's priced low, and what's supposed to be a high-scoring game, although I don't know it'll get there. I think that's an excellent play. Mark Andrews is super interesting. I want to give a shout out to Jacob Gibbs of Sportsline for the target per route run rate stat. It's an advanced metric that has a really high correlation to fantasy scoring. Go check him out on Twitter and check out some of his stuff. I've been reading it. He had a little piece that I read, that kind of questions, do you go by the last 2 games or do you go by his career sample rate? And in Mark Andrews' career, he has a 25% career target per route run rate. This year, he's been targeted on 16% of his routes. So, do you go back and look at the 3-year sample from the beginning of his career? Or do you look at the 2-game sample, and it's hard because I think he has, not played great. So he's $5,000 this week. I would never touch him in cash, not in a million years. GPPs though, I would probably take a gamble. I'll probably have him in a lineup or 2 just to see, because he could come back to form. It's still early in the year. We can't judge somebody on, 2 games is how I feel.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I'm hoping that, Lamar Jackson does end up really settling in and getting that passing game going a little bit more, because it makes him more versatile on the ground if defenses do end up having to respect that passing game a little bit more. But moving on to the Lions here, Jared Goff, 5,200. As we mentioned, he is dropping back to pass pretty much religiously at this point, as he leads the league with 102 dropbacks through the first 2 weeks. And I don't see any sign of that changing with this defense, Nate, that you guys have put together up there. Unfortunately, some injuries. You guys already had one of the worst secondaries in the league heading into the year, and now you've got some injuries going on. It's not pretty, but it is going to lead to Jared Goff putting up just massive garbage time points. And at 5,200 this week, I know we both love Hawkinson this week, and I like his price point this week. It's almost hard to build a lineup and get away from TJ Hawkinson this week. So I do expect his ownership to be pretty substantial coming in at 5,200. He's recorded 2 of his 3 highest single game scores in the first 2 games of this season, with 23.7 fantasy points and 20.6 fantasy points. He did not have a single game last year above 20 fantasy points. So he's actually taking that leap that many of us were talking about. Nate, I know you wrote a smash article about why TJ Hawkinson was a must-have for 2021. And so far through the first 2 weeks, you were absolutely correct. He has been doing everything we wanted. He's lined up in the slot on 66% of his routes this year, which is a huge uptick from the 40% that he saw out of the slot this past season. With this matchup against a Ravens defense that has been susceptible to the tight end position, what is it going to take to get anybody other than TJ Hawkinson into your lineup this week, Nate?
I've been doing some early builds and some, preliminary practice builds, and it's really hard. It's really hard to get away from Hawkinson, especially at that price. I've watched every Lions game. He's played spectacular. Everybody thought, he wasn't athletic enough or, whatever to, take the next step into like the top 3 of the tight ends in the league. And I think he's done that. I think he is in the top 3 now at this point. It's only 2 games, but I think he's proven, that he is athletic, that he is able to, make them tough catches. I love Hawkinson and Goff for fantasy this week. With my Lions bias aside, the price is too low. They've connected 100,000, they're connecting all the time, and even in that article I wrote back in March, I said that Jared Goff targets his tight ends 25% of the time. So he has done that. He's proven that he leans on his tight ends. Hawkinson is a great tight end. So, the chemistry's there. One stat that I thought was pretty crazy was through 2 weeks of football, the league leaders in total routes run are 2 tight ends. Darren Waller, 92, TJ Hawkinson, and 89. That is just crazy to me, and I think it's pretty cool. Goff and Hawkinson, it's hard for me to get away from Goff, too, to be honest with you, in these builds at 5,200. I mean, he's cheaper than pretty much everybody. He's cheaper than Matt Ryan even, and I love Matt Ryan at 54, but at 5,200, both of these guys, I think I'm going to be stacking them in GPPs. I think the ownership will probably be pretty low, maybe. It's hard to kind of predict, but a matchup against the Ravens, it's tough. It's not great, but I think these guys can still both score 20-plus points again this week for the third straight week. They did it last week against the Packers at Lambeau. So at 10,400 put together for these guys, you're going to have a ton of money left over to go after some studs. So I think this is a great play, man. I love it.
Yeah, you can lock Hawkinson into my cash build this week at 5,200. There's no tight end that I feel better about below that price point, and he's right up there with the Kelsey and Waller as far as I'm concerned with production that I'm expecting out of him this week.
Yeah, another guy I love for this game, is Tyson Williams, the Ravens running back. The Lions can't stop the run. They've shown that they're completely inept to stop any kind of run game. Williams has played okay in the Ravens games I've watched. He looks kind of explosive. I think he struggles in pass protection, which makes him lose a few snaps here and there, but the Lions can't stop the run. Williams, I think he has the potential to have a great game this week. I don't see Devontae Freeman or any of those other guys taking too many snaps. Freeman's been out there a little bit on third down because he's a better pass catcher, but I think Tyson Williams is an excellent play at 5,800.
Yeah, and we haven't seen many targets to the Ravens running backs throughout the first two games. I believe there's been a total of 6, but for what it's worth, all 6 of those, I believe, have gone to Tyson Williams. So if there is any receiving work to be had out of that backfield, he is the guy that you would be interested in. Moving on into the next game, this is kind of a game that we're going to be shying away from as far as builds go. If you're looking to get super contrarian and build a GPP, maybe this is one you can attack, but we're going to touch over this game very quickly. If you need to go use the restroom or let the dog out, now's a great time to do that. But I will just like to bring up one guy that piqued my interest as far as the price point goes, and that is James White at 4,900. This is kind of the James White of old we've seen as Mac Jones throughout the first 2 weeks. I think it's at least six targets each of the past 2 weeks now for James White, and that's bread and butter. Mac Jones seems to be more than content to check down to him. So if you're looking for a cheap sub 5K running back, I think James White does have a little bit of upside in this 42.5 point meh game up in New England. Alvin Kamara, I'll bring him up, but he kind of burned me this past week. I thought he was going to smash, but this Saints offense has really just looked terrible through the first 2 weeks, and there's not a player that I would touch on the Saints right now, and that include Kamara. They'd have to price him down much more for me to really take that pain back in. But, once again, GPP, if you're feeling like getting a little bit different, Kamara could be in play, but this is a game that I am going to avoid. The next game, however, I do think has some sneaky upside to be one of those games with the higher over-unders that maybe people aren't quite gravitating to as much as the KC Chargers game or the Tampa game. So let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals at the Jacksonville Jaguars with a 51.5 point total here. Nate, who are some guys that you're liking this week from this matchup?
I'm going to start with Marvin Jones. I know you like him. I like him. We're in agreement that this price is under 5K. Are you kidding me? 4,900. Jones has done exactly what, I kind of predicted. I'm not victory lapping, but I said several times that he's going to be the Jaguars wide receiver 1 this year. And through the first 2 weeks, he's done it. He's leading the team in targets with 19 and running a team leading 81 routes. So that's incredible. Trevor Lawrence has struggled a little bit, but I think he's going to get better as the season goes on. Jones has 4 end zone targets, which ties Mike Williams for the league lead. The Jaguars are 7.5 point underdogs, and they're going to be throwing. They're going to be playing from behind, I believe. I think you believe the same. So Trevor Lawrence is averaging 42 pass attempts per game, making, Marvin Jones far too cheap. 4,900 is just a ridiculous price. In cash, you can lock him in. I'm locking him in GPPs. I think his ownership's going to be ridiculous, but, I'm going to play him anyway. Mike Clay at Arizona's cornerback unit ranked third worst heading into the season because, there's nobody left. And this game offers the fourth highest over-under of the week at 52. I think, just like you said, I think it's going to be even higher than that.
Yeah. How about, we know obviously Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, you got to pay up for them this week. Not really. The price is just expensive. I'm not against building some GPP lines with them, but Rondale Moore, 5,000 gets priced up a little bit after his big week this past week. Among all players right now, Moore is second only to Deebo Samuel in receiving yards gained per route run. The Cardinals have used 10 personnel on a league-leading 25% of their passing plays, just ahead of the Buffalo Bills, who are running it at 24%. It seems like Rondale Moore is not necessarily getting as many snaps as we'd like to see, but when he is on the field, he's getting looks. And we've seen that it only takes one for him to take it the distance. And I just really love the way the Cardinals are using him. They're using him exactly like you're supposed to use Rondale Moore. It's exactly how he was used in college. And it's proving to be beneficial for Kyler Murray. DeAndre Hopkins, he started out smashing in the first quarter, thought he was going to really put up a big game, and then we didn't hear from him again pretty much for the remainder of the game. I still think DeAndre Hopkins is going to get his, but I do think Rondale Moore is making a case to potentially become the number 2 target behind DeAndre Hopkins moving forward. And at 5,000, I'll probably shy away a little bit this week. Just feel like he might have enough of a name value at this point coming off of the big play this past week, but just a name to monitor and something to watch moving forward. Rondale Moore really latching on to potentially that number 2 spot in one of the best offenses through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Moore is absolutely electric, and I also agree with the avoid. I think the recency bias is going to be in a huge effect this week, and I think he's going to be way overly owned, and the price is maybe even a tad bit high. But I think Moore's a great player. I'll be avoiding him in DFS this week. Another guy that I'm really unsure of is James Robinson, the Jaguars running back. He's been on the field a lot. He had a 73% snap share last week against Denver in week 2, so that's pretty interesting. I'm just afraid his ownership is going to be a bit high. I mean, at 5,700, the price is a little bit low, maybe. I'll have him in some lineups. I think this is a good matchup for him. Carlos Hyde has proved that he's not going to be taking, half of Robinson's snaps away. I think he played just like 25% of the snaps last week. So I like Robinson a lot. So I'll have him in some GPPs too.
And Robinson is getting the receiving work in a game that we do expect pretty much every game at this point, the Jacksonville Jaguars to be coming from behind there. So, potentially James Robinson at 5,700 could get enough receiving work to boost that value up. But let's move on to the next game, another kind of under the radar game with the Washington football team at the Buffalo Bills. 46.5 for the points here. Josh Allen coming in at a reasonable 7,000 this week after facing 2 of the league's toughest defenses to open up the season. Allen will take on a Washington defense that hasn't played well despite the offseason hype. The Washington football team has allowed 281 yards per game so far, and Josh Allen is due for his first big game of the season. I think that this is a spot where I might be willing to get in on him. At this point last year, Josh Allen was a must play every week. But these first 2 weeks, we really haven't seen the efficiency that we had seen this past year as far as the downfield looks go with Josh Allen. And here he is at 7,000. I think this might be a potential to get in here with some lower ownership this week. And with Stephon Diggs at 7,600. But another stack that I really like is maybe potentially getting him with Emmanuel Sanders, who seems to have really taken the number 2 role in this offense and is getting the deep shots from Josh Allen, while Stephon Diggs gets the shorter stuff underneath and the route running. Among wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders ranks 24th in targets per game with 8.5 and 6th in air yards with 136. Running routes on 91% of Josh Allen's dropbacks compared to dynasty darling Gabriel Davis only running them on 49% of Allen's route or dropbacks. Allen's deep ball completion percentage is down significantly from this past year, but this might be the spot that they get right against this Washington football team.
Yeah, I agree. Sanders is cheap. He's 34 years old, but he's not playing like it. I think he's a solid play at 4,200. It's way too cheap. There's 2 guys, though, that I want to touch on real quick because one of them I'm kind of all in on and one I'm kind of shying away from. First one's going to be Dyami Brown, wide receiver, the rookie for the Washington football team. Right now, Brown ranks just behind Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin with a 91% route share. He appears to be on track right now to be Washington's number 2 wide receiver. The Washington football team is 9.5-point underdogs against the Bills. So the game script for Dyami Brown, Taylor Heineke, Terry McLaurin, all these guys should prove to be relevant for fantasy. Heineke could end up targeting Dyami Brown on a couple deep balls, a couple deep targets. The other guy I want to talk about, though, is J.D. McKissic at 5,200. Curtis Samuel looks like he's going to be out till week 4, so we got 2 more weeks of McKissic relevance, if you want to say it. McKissic had 6 targets in week 3, catching 5. He also had a rushing touchdown, which is kind of rare. He's definitely touchdown dependent. He has a low floor, but he has kind of a high ceiling. And at 5,200 in this matchup against the Bills, it's tough. But with Curtis Samuel out, I think he's going to do McKissic things. He's going to have catches. He's going to be in there on 3rd down, and I think he's fantasy relevant. So I have no issue. If I have to pick one, I think you're going to pick Dyami Brown. For whatever reason, I can't shake it, but I'm going to pick McKissic here.
Yeah, I just like the snaps that we are seeing for Dyami really coming in and becoming the 2. I expect some tough coverage for Terry McLaurin. Maybe Dyami and Heineke can connect on one of those deep balls. Again, this is a game that I think kind of has some sneaky shootout potential if we get the same Heineke that we saw this past week. But before we move on into the afternoon games, I would like to take a quick moment to tell you about our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is the fastest growing DFS platform in the industry right now. Affiliated with the NFL, MLB, and NHL teams, their product is just as strong as their brand power. With DFS prop games of all sports leagues and skill levels, they are sure to have something for you. To get in on the action, sign up at monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code TNFF on your first deposit for an instant match up to $50. Again, that promo code is TNFF to be used on your first deposit. Get over there and make some cash with Monkey Knife Fight.
All right, moving on. We're going to move away from the early games. We're going to move on to the 4 o'clock games in the late afternoon. The first game we're going to talk about, Miami Dolphins at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have really surprised me this year. Tua is going to miss this game for the Dolphins, so it could be sloppy. It could be a blowout. The Raiders have looked pretty good, so without Tua, I'm not sure where the Dolphins are going to land. So I wanted to quickly touch on Jacoby Brissett. Are we going to play him 4,900? It's really, really cheap. The matchup's tough. I like the Raiders defense. I like that defensive line. Last week when he was filling in for Tua, he went 24 for 40, no touchdowns and interception. The biggest reason I feel like he needs to be brought up is just the price tag and the rushing upside. We love quarterbacks with rushing upside in DFS. Brissett has it. Feels really, really gross to me. I don't think I'm going to have any exposure, to be honest. I can get Goff at 5,200, for $300 more. I'm going to go that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Goff in that spot where we know he's expected to put up a ton of pass attempts, or right there in that same range. As I mentioned, Justin Fields. If I'm chasing rushing upside, I'd much rather do it with Justin Fields than Jacoby Brissett. But I do believe Derek Carr is going to play. Gruden came out and said he is going to play. So This is a potential game that Las Vegas should be able to have their way with these Miami Dolphins, and probably a game that I won't have a ton of exposure to on either side of the ball. If you want to pay up at defense, like Nate mentioned, Raiders DST has been looking pretty stout the first couple weeks, and here with Jacoby Brissett under center for Miami, you can get those Raiders DST for 3,400 this week, but I still prefer my Tennessee Titans at 2,400. Let's move on into the next game, another one that we won't spend much time on, and that is the New York Jets at the Denver Broncos, 41.5 for the point total here. Nate, I know we talked a little bit about it before the show. There's really not any pieces on this New York Jets team that we're looking to get exposure to this week. But again, if you are building some wild GPP lines, you could do a New York Jets stack that is almost sure to be 0.01% ownership on the slate. So it might be a good way to get different, but I myself will probably have no Jets exposure this week. What about the Denver Broncos, Nate? Anybody from Denver's side of the ball that you might be interested? I know we talked about Javonte Williams, a little bit of a letdown this past week. Price is still, reasonable. Any Javonte exposure this week?
I think I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to let Javonte kind of come to me, let him get, in his groove and get some more carries. Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback now for the Denver Broncos, he's priced at 5,800. If he was just a little bit cheaper, I'd be more interested. Sutton, I'll probably avoid at 6,000. I kind of do like Noah Fant. He was 4,200 last week, and he caught a touchdown pass. So this price did go up. If it was a little lower, it'd be a little bit better, but I might have Fant in a lineup or two.
Man, Sutton really looked good this past week. That was we got to see a little bit of a glimpse into the Sutton that we remembered seeing a couple of years ago. So if that connection continues with Teddy Bridgewater, Cortland Sutton might be somebody I'm interested in. But as you mentioned, at 6,000, I think that there's enough guys in the 5,000 range that I like enough to stay away from Cortland Sutton. But for a GPP stack, 5,800 for Bridgewater, 6,000 for Sutton, and 4,800 for Fant in a game that we expect them to dominate. It could go that route. But let's move on into another one of the exciting games of the afternoon slate. That is the red-hot Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Nate, one of your favorite teams to really chase as far as players go these past couple weeks in the Los Angeles Rams, here with another massive 54.5 point total this week. Nate, start us out here, man. What are we doing in this game? Who do you like? Who do you not like?
I like a lot of people, man. I can't wait just to watch this game with DFS involved. It's going to be even more exciting. I'm going to start out, though, with Tom Brady. I believe he's 58 years old now, but he's playing like he's 22. The guy is incredible. He's 6,800 this week. There's no way we can talk about this game and not bring up Brady. He's thrown for 9 touchdowns, 655 passing yards so far, and he's heading into a matchup against, Stafford, Kupp, and company with the Rams. Like you said, the point total is at a 54.5. Could be even higher than that. I think this game is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I question what Brady's ownership will be. It could be a bit high. I think as far as cash goes, I think you can lock almost all these guys in for cash lineups this week. They're all going to produce. This game is going to be wild. One of Brady's favorite targets and one of our favorite targets this week is Chris Godwin at 6,100. Through 2 weeks of football, Godwin has 18 total targets. 13 of them were in one game, but we still like that. Statistically, he's proven that Brady loves throwing to him. And Mike Evans could have a tough matchup as well. That'll just help Godwin even more. Gronk's pretty good in this game, 5,500. He's been obviously, it's not sustainable, the pace that he's on right now, but he just keeps proving everybody wrong and catching touchdown passes. His price is up a little bit, $800 it's up. So he has a 30% target share. I like him in this game. When they get in the red zone, Brady's going to look for him. Antonio Brown is out. He's on the COVID protocol. That's only going to help Gronk and Godwin even more.
Yeah, and coach seems to think that Jalen Ramsey will indeed be more so on Godwin and views Evans as having more of a favorable matchup. But either way, if Antonio Brown is indeed not available I think it bodes well for both wide receivers. And what's really started to feel like, you want to get part of Tom Brady, but which weapons is it going to be this week? Gronkowski coming off of back-to-back 2-touchdown performances. Can he do it again, or is this the week to get off of Gronkowski before the bottom falls out?
I just wanted to say, according to Jamie Eisenberg of CBS Sports, Fantasy Football Today podcast, great podcast, they reported that Evans would actually be the one being covered. So we'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, it's definitely something to monitor. But like I mentioned, with AB out, I think it bodes well for both guys this week, and it shortens that pie just enough to where you can get easily 2 out of 3 guys, right, versus the 2 out of 4 playing the odds there for Tampa Bay. How about Matthew Stafford, though? 6,400. Start of Stafford's career has been very solid, and his fantasy numbers weren't overly impressive this past week against the Colts, but he played great and was in command of his team. He's thrown 5 touchdowns and only 1 interception through the 2 weeks and has shown great chemistry with his wideouts. This matchup isn't great, but Stafford should be forced to throw a bit more in week 3 due to the stout run defense of this Tampa Bay team. There's probably a couple of better cash options out there, but Stafford has GPP play written all over him this week in this shootout that we're expecting in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody knows that I love Stafford, but with that bias aside, he's played absolutely great this year. He's meshed so well with that new team with Sean McVay and his wideouts, Cooper Kupp and them guys. Robert Woods is getting targets. He hasn't caught all of them, but him and Kupp have just been unbelievable. Kupp has 21 targets through 2 weeks and 16 catches, 3 touchdowns. I don't expect it to slow down, to be honest. I do, however, expect the ownership to be getting kind of a bit ridiculous. Honestly, it was high last week. I think it's going to be even higher. It's 6,800. I'll lock Kupp into cash right now. He'll be in all my cash lineups. But GPPs, I'll probably actually go a bit contrarian and look for somebody else this week.
Yeah, how about Woods as the contrarian play? Everybody is going to be all over Kupp, as you mentioned. Woods potentially could be in play. He's a little bit cheaper, but a guy I like is Van Jefferson at 3,600, I believe, this week. He's actually second on this team in routes run at 56, behind Cooper Kupp 60, Tyler Higbee sitting at 51, and Robert Woods sitting at 50. Tyler Higbee is running routes like a madman out there. Unfortunately, he just didn't get targeted this past week. I had a good amount of exposure to Tyler Higbee, so I could tell you all about it. His price did actually drop by $100 this week, coming in at $4,000 even this week. It might be a Tyler Higbee get right week. So if you're looking to, get a little bit different, get off the Kupp ownership bandwagon, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, or Robert Woods could all be substitutes for the Cooper Kupp that is expected to be one of the higher owned players on this slate. I do want to take a quick minute here while we are talking about this Rams team to bring up at Coach Craig Sport. He's been in the comments. He's here every night pretty much. But last week when we were having the show, he did call out his punt play for the week as being Freddie Swain, and Freddie Swain indeed delivered. I don't have Swain's exact line here, but I just want to give Coach a shout out, so much so that I reached out to him. I said, Coach, you nailed the Freddie Swain call punt play last week. Give me another one this week. And he came back to me with Deshaun Jackson here at 3,000 this week, a league minimum price point, and could potentially blow up in this high scoring affair here. So Coach, if you go 2 for 2, man, we are going to have to send you some SODFS gear on the house here. So pay attention and go follow at Coach Craig Sport. He's a great follow, got a great YouTube channel and everything. So, Coach, we appreciate you tuning in and hooking us up with some punt plays every week.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Coach too. We speak every day, daily, all day pretty much, unless I'm at work. But He's got great advice, great knowledge of defense far beyond mine, to be honest with you. And yeah, give him a follow, show him some love. Great guy.
Nate, take us into the Seattle Seahawks at Minnesota Vikings. Another burner here, 55.5 point total here. As I mentioned, this week, we really see a bunch of these games, which allows you to really get some good differentiating lines compared to the field. Just having these options to choose from, it's not condensed down into one or just two games that we feel like the field's going to be targeting. There's really 3 or 4 here, and just getting an array of mini stacks, onslaught stacks, whatever you feel could be advantageous. I just love having the options here, and here we are with another one with the Seahawks at the Vikings. Where are you at here on this game, Nate? Who are we targeting?
This game, I think, is really interesting. I think it could be one where the point total might be a bit lower than 55.5, but I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game and fun to watch. I think Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson are all in play. Cousins at 6,300, Thielen at 6,700, and JJ at 72. I think they're all in play. GPP mostly is what I'm looking at here, but Cousins has been impressive so far this year, especially as far as fantasy numbers go. So I'm all about that. Thielen is the guy I think I'm going to target the most at 6,700. He's being used more in the short game for the Vikings. If you look back to 2020 compared to 2021, his average route depth has went up from from 9.2 yards to 8.2, and his average depth of target has dropped from 11.5 to 5.9. 11% of his targets have come from 15 yards plus downfield. In 2020, that rate was 34%. So he's just showing that he's getting all the short passes, the underneath stuff, the dump offs and things like that. So there's a lot of hate on Thielen coming into the year. He's 30 years old, and Justin Jefferson's going to take everything away. And there are some other young wide receivers for the Vikings that have played extremely well, but I really think we should show Thielen some respect. At 6,700, I think he's really great for cash. He's caught 15 of 17 targets as a result of the shortened route tree this year. So, with the projected point total of this game, I think you can lock Thielen in, cash or GPP. I'll probably focus more on cash, but I like him for both.
Yeah, I want to bring up my guy here, staying with the Vikings. KJ Osborne coming in at 3,500 was kind of a speculative play this past week, and he came through. Through 2 weeks, KJ Osborne has run a route on 82% of Kirk Cousins' dropbacks and has been targeted on 15% of his passing attempts, catching 12 of his 15 targets for 167 yards and a score. Vikings are running 3 wide sets a ton, and Osborne has proven to be the beneficiary. He's too cheap after what we've seen these past 2 weeks. Week 3, once again, brings an ideal game environment for Vikings pass catchers as Minnesota faces Seattle in a game with the second highest point total of 55 this week. KJ Osborne, 3,500 for this week's punt play. I love it. It's just a play that I feel pretty good about, and at 3,500, when I can get a 3,500 guy that I feel pretty good about, I want to lock him in. So get you some KJ Osborne exposure this week. Dalvin Cook, potentially healthy, potentially unhealthy. He's been a little banged up through the first couple of weeks. I'm assuming he is going to play, but we don't know yet. Brings me to Alexander Mattison at 6K. If Dalvin Cook is indeed a scratch this week, any interest in Alexander Mattison at 6,000?
Personally, I think I'll avoid the situation. We don't know if Cook's going to get, 10 carries. He could get 20. We don't know how healthy he really is. We don't know what's going on. So 6,000 is kind of a lot for me, not knowing what's going to happen. So I'm going to be fully avoiding that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty much going to be targeting the passing game in this game itself. I feel like I got lucky with my Chris Carson call last week where he did stumble into the end zone twice, but really nothing outside of that to really brag about. So targeting the passing game this week. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. It's been pretty much all Tyler Lockett so far. Russell Wilson coming in at 7,600 is pricey, but he's played great so far this year, only throwing for 14 total incompletions on 54 pass attempts, and he's got 6 touchdowns and 597 passing yards. This should be another high-scoring affair. and Wilson should be once again asked to carry his team. Tyler Lockett at 7,400 has been one of the most efficient downfield route runners in recent years, and he has continued that. Nate, you have some numbers here for us for Tyler Lockett over the course of this season.
Yeah, it's more average route depth than more ADOT. In 2020, his average route depth was 7.5 yards. This year, he's up to almost 10.5, and his ADOT is up from 9.7 to 16.9. That is a big increase. Through 2 games, Lockett has 16 targets, 12 receptions, 278 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's been on fire. One thing I just want to say about Lockett is in years past, he's always been like the best ball darling and DFS, stud, because he's either on fire or he's quiet. So hopefully he doesn't fall off. I think this could be a sneaky DK Metcalf week. They're priced at the same price. Everybody's going to be on Lockett. I'm throwing DK Metcalf into a bunch of GPPs.
I'm with you on that. I like DK Metcalf this week. I thought it was going to be his week last week. I think I'm just going to keep plugging him in until we get it right. So give me DK Metcalf this week, potentially on a bring back stack if you want to go Kirk Cousins, Thielen, and KJ Osborne, potentially with Metcalf bringing it back. That's a good way to get you started out here on a game that is supposed to be, like I mentioned, one of the higher over-unders on this slate. I guess, Nate, that's pretty much it. That's the last game here on this slate in the afternoon games. I wanted to take a quick moment to bring up, having the opportunity to do a late swap when you have games like this, like the Seattle Vikings game, Tampa Bay Bucs and Rams, both here in the late afternoon. There is going to be some heavy exposure. Once the first games kick off, you really need to check out some of your roster percentages and see which guys you had that ended up being a little bit higher or a little bit lower. And if a couple of guys that you had going in the early games ended up, with some 15% plus, exposure, then you may need to, take a look at your lineup, see who you've got going in the afternoon. And if they are, expected to have 10 to 12+% ownership, you may want to go ahead and think about pivoting to some lower owned guys. And that's the beauty of the late swap. So let's say that you are far out of the money in a contest, but you have a Monday night player in your lineup. If you think that they're going to be highly owned and you won't be able to make up enough ground, or even if it does have a productive night, you could try swapping out that player to a player that has very low ownership, hoping for a breakout performance from that player and getting differentiated from the field. Nate, is a late swap a strategy that you've been trying to implement this year?
Yeah, that's really great advice. You can also use that same advice for the main slate if you have a bunch of 1 o'clock guys and a couple, maybe 1 4 o'clock guy, and you're down a lot or the ownership's ridiculous on the players you picked. Late swap it, and that's how progress is made. There's been tournaments won by the late swap, so that's excellent advice to give out to the people.
Before we start to wrap it up, we have been letting everybody know that if you subscribe to the TNFF network, send us a screenshot at Dynasty Sons of that you are subscribed to that network. We put your name into a wheel that we will be spinning here in just a moment, and whoever's name is selected from this wheel will end up getting the SODFS shirt giveaway. So Matt, I think, has it queued up in the back. Let's go ahead and spin that wheel so we can find out who our lucky winner is for the SODFS t-shirt from our friends over at Veridian Global. Hot Box Bo. I am a huge fan of Bo. Been knowing him for a while now, and he has some A1 hot sauce. You could hit him up, and he will definitely get you that. But Bo, make sure you hit us up because you are the winner of an SODFS shirt. Nate, something to say?
Yeah, Bo is fantastic. He's a fantastic writer. His articles are absolutely great, and I'm not just saying that. You can read all of his work over at Ball Blast. Make sure you do give him a follow on Twitter because the guy is great.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Bo, and so I couldn't be happier that he is the one that is indeed going to get to represent properly. Coach Craig, I saw your name right up there after
So
his, man.
close.
That is a tough break, buddy. But, we love you, and there's going to be more, giveaways that we will be doing here. But, Bo, please do reach out to us, or we will reach out to you so we can get your sizing info and get you a shirt shipped out to you as soon as possible. I want to take a quick moment to shout out the website for truenorthffb.com/SOD/ to get into the clubhouse, where you can find a lineup of all of our videos, all of our article content, and anything SODFS you can find there. And check out the rest of the True North website, where they have just tons of articles, data, rankings, anything that fantasy football related you can find there, and it's all available to you 100% free. So make sure you check that out. I believe they are also doing a shirt giveaway. All you got to do is check out the website, send an email that let them know what you think, what you like, what you didn't like, and your name will be put into a drawing to win your very own TNFF t-shirt. Shout out to Sons of Dynasty, and once again, you can follow them at Dynasty Sons. Brother Matt, who is behind the scenes tonight, as always, is at DY_nasty dude. You can follow him. He is kicking it here with us every Thursday night. And make sure you're following True North. That's at True North FFB. And Nate, I mentioned the article that is dropping tomorrow morning, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So
we have an article. We have an article coming out tomorrow morning. It's our top 5 DraftKings plays. It's something that will come out every Friday between 7 and 8 a.m. You get a chance to check out the new site. It's clean. It's fresh. There's tons of info there, everything from starts and sits to, weird statistics from the week before, our DFS plays. We've been doing a ton of work over there. I've been spending a lot of time working on the site, so be sure to check out the whole site while you check out our article. Give some of the other articles a read too. We have a lot of great writers at True North.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, anything else that you want to plug or say before we wrap it up here for the night?
I just want to give a shout out also to Veridian Global, like you said, and the shirt giveaway. Veridian is a great company. Will is absolutely amazing. So I just want to say thank you to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate anybody who did tune in tonight. Let us know what you liked. Leave us a comment here underneath the video. Hit the thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down. That's fine with us too. But we do appreciate you tuning in. Nate, one more thing.
I just want to say thank you to Brother Matt, our producer. The show would not be running the way it is without him. He's behind the scenes. He works as hard as anybody I know. So thank you, Matt, for everything you do.
Appreciate you, Brother Matt, and appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. Until next time, enjoy the rest of that Thursday night game. We will catch you this time again next week, next Thursday at 9 o'clock East. Hope you guys win some money this week. Much love to everybody.
SODFS is for entertainment only and to add value to your sports experience. We give you our advice and strategy that we will employ ourselves. SODFS is not intended for those under the age of 18.